So the first one we are calling Pavilion, and the concept behind this is kind of an upper volume or massing of a building that sits on a lower podium of a building. And so what you see here is an upper piece and a lower piece. So, which is the model that we have right here. And if everybody wants to come around, I'll kind of walk through it, and then I'll walk through a couple of the other slides that are related to this. So the idea of this is that we would have this outdoor space that would be a usable roof deck, and it connects to Humboldt Mall. And so this maximizes that outdoor connection from this level all the way out here. And then there's some kind of pavilion that sits in the middle of this that would be kind of this beacon of what the student union building is. Now the shape is completely irrelevant at this point. The idea is that there's a volume up here and there's a volume of space, or a building, or an amount of space below. Now because we've created some kind of mass right here, it actually drives a lot of program into the lower 2 floors. And this is the one scheme that actually has program on the bottom floor on level 8. So just kind of walking through this kind of stacking diagram, which might help to visualize. So we have this loading area that's for trucks and for service access. This is all building services. Students wouldn't go down here. But as we connect over to this area, we would be, and this is just a placeholder for what could be there, but we would end up having some kind of program on the south side. And this would be most likely, other than a small portion of it, fully below grade. So in order to get daylight into these spaces, we're looking at creating some kind of interior courtyards. So this might be open to above, but it would be glass all the way around here. So when you're in this space, and you're in this space over here, you would be looking at some kind of internal courtyards. And there was an example, Mark, that we used the other day. Do you remember what that was? There was a courtyard on campus.
I think it was an applied sciences.
A courtyard in there. Okay. So the difference here, though, is that your views are actually internal, not external. So this is really more of a strategy to get daylight into those spaces rather than it is to create a view of something far away. The circulation that we're looking at, so this floor connects directly to the Maggie Benson Center. There would be a large dining area right here, and then perhaps some student activity and meeting spaces here. When we start thinking about what types of spaces really benefit from daylight, it's going to be the lounges, the study spaces, and even some of the student activity spaces. But maybe perhaps the meeting rooms can be areas that can be further back where they don't have as much daylight because they're used for shorter periods of time. The next level, so we would be looking at having, as I mentioned, that large outdoor space that happens out here, and there may be some, so an entrance to the building might happen here or here, and you would enter into the building and there'd be a lounge and then perhaps some student activity spaces, and these are actually openings to below so you can get that visual connection of what happens in the building. So this might be an atrium similar to what you see right here. And we've made it a block, but it would be actually glass, not solid. So that just allows us to stack it a little bit. There'd be a connection via some kind of pedestrian bridge across. Whether that's fully enclosed or it's just has a roof over it, we're not sure yet, but there'll be a link over to this building, to the AQ's South Concourse, and then perhaps some additional student activity and lounge spaces here. And then the next level would have perhaps a multi-purpose room, which is less dependent on, well, you don't want any columns in there, so you want to put some of these larger spaces in areas where you don't need the columns, and so that would be the roof, which then has no structure above it, so there's no additional load. And then the roof of this, whether this roof is occupied or not, is something that we can talk about as we get further into the design. But the idea of this scheme is some kind of mass here and some kind of mass here. But I want to draw your attention to the TV again. So one of the things to keep in mind in here is that visual catalog and that kind of flow of space. And because we have a certain amount of program we have to distribute, we're forced to put more program on the bottom 2 floors. And we don't have as much opportunity to create kind of connections between the different parts of the building. So we might have an atrium here which allows us to get that visual connection into what's happening within this block, but that's a small piece of the program. And then you have to travel quite a bit to get to the other end, and then we're connecting a little bit of this program, but there's no actual connection between these two that provides that visual link. And we'll talk about one of the other schemes that differs significantly from this. So just to show what that might be, so that's similar, so this is a plan view looking from above. This is looking from Gallardi Way. This is something that was talked about last year quite a bit, is preserving this view of the AQ as you drive up Gallardi Way, and so looking at what the impact of each of these buildings might be on that view. And then the view from Combo Mall, which is something we've also talked about as being important. This scheme, it actually respects this view, but as we'll show you in a couple of the other schemes, which might be more visible on this, in this view, how important is it to preserve the view of the AQ as you're walking through Combo Mall, and it becomes more revealed as you move through it. And then a view standing in Freedom Square looking south. And so the building, because it's set back, it looks quite small in here, that pavilion piece. But it's set a little bit further back, so we get that forecourt and that sense of space around the building. Any questions?